Hello friends, welcome to another episode of the Mahabharatha podcast. This is your friend Shankar Narayan signing in. Last week we saw about Amba, Ambika, Ambalika and what happened to Amba with Bhishma, how Bhishma was put in a fix because of his actions in anger. Okay, before we start today's episode, I would like to wish a very happy Holi to all the listeners. When we say Holi, we have a certain symbolization. What is the symbol of Holi? Why do we celebrate Holi? We celebrate Holi to indicate or mark the destruction of bad and rise of good. It's a destruction of evil and rise of good. So that's what in South India we call it the Kamanna Habba, where the dolls of demons like Ravana is made and they try to fire it and indicate burning of bad things and rise of good again. So any time it could be that the bad could get stronger, but there is always a day where the bad is destroyed and the good will rise again. Now there's a very interesting thought-provoking idea about this. If you see the whole mythology, what happens right from the Dashavatara, if you take from the first one, you see where is the bad lying? Initially, everybody on earth were very good. They did not harm each other. So the imbalance actually came from outside. It actually came in the form of nature. It could be a big flood on earth. It could be a rise of certain bad things slowly rising, still the nature would immediately cut it off. But as and when you come down into the mythology, by the time Parashurama came, you can see that the bad things were all around the earth. So it said that Parashurama went all around the earth killing all the bad people. Yeah, they say Kshatriyas, but they were getting powerful. The Kshatriyas were trying to get too powerful and trying to control the whole system. That's what system doesn't allow. System wants to be self-regulated. So if somebody is trying to hold too much of control, the nature will take its own course of action. And when Rama came, what happened? You can see good and bad were confined. There was a very well-defined bad. Ravana was in Sri Lanka and Rama was somewhere in India. So you can see that the whole process of identifying the bad and killing the bad, and Ravana, he just disrespected a woman once. You can see the amount of impact or the amount of weightage given to such a bad thing. It was considered very bad. Ravana's only one, he was a very nice person, but he disrespected a woman only once, and you can see the whole impact. The whole system took a jolt and said this is not acceptable. But you can see today such things keep happening every second, every minute. So we are deteriorating in a way. So there was a well-defined demon which Rama had to kill. Now interestingly, when you come down to Mahabharata, which we are going to discuss later, we will see the whole Pandavas and Kauravas, even Krishna and Kamsa, all of them were in the same family. Right? Suddenly the good and bad, initially bad was imbalance came from nature, then it was confined to everywhere, it was distributed everywhere, slowly rising and nature would suppress it. But then slowly it started getting stronger and it got confined to a particular place. And Krishna, by the time Krishna came, it got confined to one house within the same family. And interestingly, we can see that today in Kali Yuga, good and bad came much closer. It's got inside all of us. So in Kali Yuga, if you see human beings, sometimes we ourselves we cannot distinguish what we are. We sometimes get guilty of doing something, or sometimes we feel very proud of what we do. So every human being, we will see this in Mahabharata. Arjuna is one such character. We will always see him representing a common man, and that's why the character Arjuna is so famous. We will see that. Especially the contrast between Arjuna's and Karna's character. That is something I would really love to narrate when I move on. But coming back here, what I am discussing. So suddenly you see, they came in the same family, and of course in Kali Yuga, everything is within us. So every person has a certain amount of good and certain amount of bad. So if we can put it in, we are a mixture of God and demon. That's what human beings are. At least in Kali Yuga, the human beings are, a mixture of good and bad, the God and demon. Now, if we really have to celebrate Holi, the first thing what we can do today is to sit down and look at ourselves, look inside ourselves and see, okay, what is that is good about me? Try to nourish it, save it for the rest of our life. And what is that bad thing about me? What is bad about me? So we should try to kill that, cut that out and move on from here. Probably that's the best way we can celebrate Holi. So with that small trivia, I would love to wish a very happy Holi to all of you once again. And with that, we will go back to our story of Mahabharata, where we left last week. So we discussed on one branch of the story about what happened to Amba, what happened when she went back to Kalva, and how did Bhishma try to convince all that. Now on the other side, I also told that Ambika and Ambalika were married to Vichitravirya. Yeah, that continued. They became, at least on the papers, they became the queens of Hastinapur. Things continued the way it was. Vichitravirya was very happy to, have married. So he spent most of his time with Ambika and Ambalika, just enjoying the pleasures of being a royal king. As always, the administration taking care of Hastinapur was completely handled by Bhishma and Satyavati. Now, what happened at this point is Vichitravirya fell ill. So he had some disease that could never be cured, and it just built upon, and Vichitravirya finally died. Now you see, that's why it is still said that man proposes and God disposes. If you remember back what all Satyavati and her father did to ensure that her kids and her lineage gets into the kingship, everything, the whole calculation was turned around. Chitrangada died in a very stupid fashion. Then Vichitravirya, she got Vichitravirya married so that he will have kids to, continue the lineage. But before he even had any kid, Vichitravirya had a disease which couldn't be cured and he died. Now it was all that Hastinapur was in a big imbalance. Why? Because currently nobody can touch Hastinapur. Until Bhishma is around, nobody would even dare to touch Hastinapur. That Bhishma was such a fierce warrior, and they knew until this fellow is around, we can't even think of touching Hastinapur. But Bhishma has taken a vow, so he will not become the king. He will not break his own promise. He will not marry. He will not become a king. See, in fact, even Satyavati goes to Bhishma at this point and she will tell him, see, you made the promise for my sake. You took the oath for my sake. Why don't you break it now? I am asking you. Please break it. Please get married. You can, in fact, marry your own brother's wives so that they also live like widows. Why don't you marry them? Why don't you continue the lineage? Bhishma again said, no, I have taken. I would have married if that was the case. I would have married Amba, who tried to trouble me so much. So both of them thought about Amba at that point. I married Amba, who troubled me so much. I cannot break the promise I have made. This is how I want to live. This is what it is. So please don't ask me. You asked for something, I gave you. Now it is up to you how you handle the situation. Bhishma said this. He promptly took a back foot. But nobody could touch Hastinapur until that fellow is alive, because he had built such a strong army and he himself is such a fierce warrior. So no point, no other lineage, no other king family would try to come and invade Hastinapur to rule. So that's gone. Now it is the job of Kuruvansha. It was the responsibility of Kuruvansha to continue the lineage. But how? That became the biggest question of Satyavati. How will this lineage continue? Both her sons are dead. She has 2 daughter-in-laws. Bhishma won't marry. He will not have kids. Now how will the lineage continue? And that's when Bhishma suggested, okay, in the past, it was a very liberated society. That's what I keep telling. whenever I talk to people, the society was more open and more liberated at that time. See, the queens who did not have husbands, who, if there are too many women queens who did not have husband, they could still have kids, probably through this what we call today as artificial insemination. So they could have kids that way, and they always chose to have kids for a person who is more learned, who is a better learned person than what their lineage is. So they want to have kids for someone who is equally learned or more learned. So that is why they always choose to have kids for a Brahmin. Again, Brahmin doesn't mean a particular caste. It was the Varnashrama that was done for division of labor. The meritorious people who had learned, who were scholars, who knew the subjects, who completely dedicated themselves into the art of learning, those were what was called Brahmin. It was not because of the blood. There are a lot of examples that come again and again in all the mythology, in all the books that we read. It's only that we misunderstand. So Brahmin is someone who is educated, who has a very high learning capability. So women, whenever they want to have kids outside their marriage through probably whatever means, what we call as artificial insemination, so they choose to have kids for a very learned person, that is for a Brahmin. So this suggestion came in front of Satyavati that in such situation, now there is a situation that has to be handled. So in such situation, the daughter-in-laws or the queens of the family can afford to go for this kind of having kids for a learned person, who is someone who is at a higher merit in terms of learning. So that's when Satyavati revealed the whole story of Vedavyasa, King Parashar that I had narrated earlier to Bhishma. And then she says, okay, you have given me a very good suggestion now. Probably I'll have to summon Vedavyasa to handle this situation. See, if you see, definitely Vedavyasa knew some art of medical science at that time. Not just here at this point, even going ahead, when Gandhari destroys her own womb, he is the one who tries to create those test tube babies kind of environment and get all the 100 Kauravas born. I will narrate that in detail later. So definitely this fellow Vedavyasa knew some art of medical science. So that is when she summons Vedavyasa in particular. And when Vedavyasa arrives, she says, see, this is the situation. So we need future kings, and for that we would love to have kids born to the daughter-in-laws through you. Whatever method that were used. Okay, so through you. So Vedavyasa says, okay, fine, you are my mother and I will definitely oblige. But trying to do so, I have one condition. She says, what? See, the condition goes like this. Whenever I try to put life in their womb, whatever feeling they carry, whatever the thing they carry in their brain, that will be the information that will be completely going down into the DNA of the kid. So, for example, if they show a feeling of being afraid, they will get a kid who is always afraid, who will never be a warrior, who will never be someone who is strong, who is brave. So it's like that. Whatever signs they show, and I'm trying to put life in their womb, that is the kind of kid they will actually give birth to. This is the condition that Vedavyasa says. So Satyavati will say, okay, I will prepare both my daughter-in-laws. I will tell them this condition. I'll ensure they come with the right devotion and completely apply themselves into it so that they give birth to the right kind of babies. So she tries to convince Ambika and Ambalika about all this. The problem what happens is Satyavati never tells about the appearance of Vedavyasa. The moment she says Vedavyasa, Ambika and Ambalika will have a different picture of how Vedavyasa will look like. But actually Vedavyasa is someone who would have spent all his life in forest or in mountains and trying to do meditation. He would have spent a lot of time in meditating. So he will not a person who will look very clean and neat for a physical appearance. He was a very shabby guy. So with lot of beard, and the beard stuck with lot of dust around. His whole body is badly smelling. So he's that kind of a very shabby guy. So Ambika and Ambalika did not have this idea that Vedavyasa will look so shabby. So that is something Satyavati would forget to tell them. So what happens first? Ambika goes, and when Ambika goes, suddenly she'll be taken with a big shock seeing Vedavyasa. So she will be so much that she don't want to see Vedavyasa anymore, looking at his appearance. So for the complete process of bearing the life in her womb, she keeps her eye closed very tightly. She doesn't want to see Vedavyasa anymore. So she keeps the eyes completely closed. So that's how Ambika gets a life in her womb. And then next comes the turn of Ambalika. When Ambalika comes, she will remember what her mother-in-law told, that whatever you do is what transfers to the kid. So she keeps her eye open, but while doing so, she puts a lot of pressure to herself. So she will be completely pale. So she will be completely tired and pale. So that is the information that gets transferred into the life in her womb. So when she bears life in her womb, she'll be totally pale and completely tired looking, and that is the information that goes in. So then Vedavyasa says to Satyavati, see, this is what happened when I was putting life in their womb. This is what happened. Ambika closed her eyes. So she will probably give birth to a blind child, a child that is blind by birth. He will be very strong. He will have all the other aspects of kingship, but he'll be blind. And next, Ambalika will give birth to a child which is normal in all respects, but it will be very pale. It will not be a very strong person. It will not be a muscle guy that is needed for a kingship. It will be a very pale guy, thin guy. That is the kind of kid that she will give birth to. And Satyavati is again worried. What is this? I did some calculation and looks like everything has gone reversed. So she kind of asked Vedavyasa again, okay, let them give birth to these two kids. Why don't you come back after an year and again put lives in their wombs? So that is something, because we want someone who is really capable of taking this lineage ahead and be a king. And then Vedavyasa again says, okay, again you are my mother. I'm a guy who was supposed to be in forest meditating. I cannot disturb my meditation so many times. But still you are my mother. You are telling, I will have one condition. I will do it only one more time. I will put life in one of your daughter-in-law's womb only one more time. You choose who it is. Once I do it one more time, then I stop. I'm not here. I'm going back. So I'll come back after an year. I will only do putting one more life into one of your daughter-in-law's womb, and then I am done. I'm not turning back here. So Satyavati says, okay, I agree to this. Please come back. After that, I will not ask. So it's a promise done. So the deal was done. And after an year, as expected, Ambika gave birth to a blind child. The baby was blind by birth, and they named the baby Drithrashtra. And Ambalika gave birth to a baby that was quite normal, but very pale looking, as though it doesn't have any blood in the body. Very pale looking, always tired, always lethargic kind of body language. So that baby was named Pandu. So we had Drithrashtra and Pandu, who were half brothers, born to different mothers but from the same source of life. So that happened, and then as promised, Vedavyasa comes back. Now Satyavati goes back to her daughter-in-laws and she says, see, one last time, we need a baby who can really be the king of this Hastinapura. So we really want one of you decide who of you will go. So you go one last time. Please completely dedicate yourself into bearing the child. So if you have the devotion, if you have the dedication, you will definitely have a life that is capable of, that is intelligent, brave enough, capable of handling this whole kingship. Now the thing with Ambika and Ambalika, they were not so much an administration thinking woman like Satyavati was. Satyavati was a very strong leader, to say. She had that leadership kind of thinking. But Ambika and Ambalika were very common, more or less very common, ordinary queens. So for them, the problem was facing Vedavyasa again. I mean, how can we face that fellow who's so shabby, who's so, they were very uncomfortable even facing that fellow. So what they did is, they said, okay, none of us are going. So they made a plan. Okay, anyways, Vedavyasa has told it's only once he will do again. He will put life in only one womb again. So if somehow we both can escape this, we are done. So they cannot come back and ask. So what happens? They go and they convince one of their maid to actually go and bear the life, whatever that Vedavyasa wanted to put. She's convinced and she's sent. Instead of both of them, she goes in. But when the maid goes, she goes with a complete devotion. All that she was happy about was that she's gonna, bear a life, a child, a baby of someone of the merit of Vedavyasa, the highest merit that you can. So she is gonna have or bear the life of a highly learnt scholar, and that's something that really excited her. See, you see the difference of what happens. What is the kind of attention we give to something? This gives a very important message. You give attention more to the physical appearance of something, you might really go wrong at certain point. What attention we really need to give is what is inside that. We don't really need to care about, of course, aesthetic sense is important, as I said earlier, but it's not too important. Aesthetic sense is not everything. We gotta give importance to something. If something has more weightage than the aesthetic part of it, we need to give importance to that. And that's exactly what happened again. The queens who actually were not supposed to give importance to the aesthetic nature of Vedavyasa, they did that. They couldn't bear the right child and they all missed an opportunity of bearing a right child as well. But a maid who saw beyond the physical appearance of Vedavyasa, who saw into his scholarship, who saw into his brains, his meritorious nature, she was very happy that she is going to bear a child for someone like Vedavyasa. So she went with complete devotion, and then Vedavyasa, as promised, ends up doing the process on the maid, and she bears a child. And when Satyavati learns about it, she was totally in shock. But unfortunately, she couldn't do anything more. Like Vedavyasa had told, he will never come back, don't call me again. So she has tried everything from her end. Finally she settles down, okay, something better than nothing. We have 2 kids. We have Bhishma. Somehow we have to handle the next generation with these 2 kids. And the third one who is born to the maid is the very great character of Mahabharata, that is Vidhura. So Vidhura was born with everything perfect. The right physique, in fact, he was very intelligent person in the next generation of the entire Mahabharata. So that's why you have a complete Vidhura Niti written. I'll discuss in detail about what Vidhura Niti says against a different kind of administration. There's one more character called Kaninka. Not many people know about Kaninka in Mahabharata, but that whole contrast of Vidhura Niti versus Kaninka Niti is absolutely wonderful. It even applies to current day politics, but we will get there in some episodes coming soon. But Vidhura was someone born to the maid. Because of her complete devotion, he was born perfect, right warrior, really brilliant person. So in future you will see, he'll continue as minister to Pandu and Drithrashtra forever. They'll treat him as his brother, but since he was not born to a queen, he was not someone who can take the throne. So he will always continue as a minister. So Satyavati settles there saying, okay, fine, I have 2 grandsons now. We gotta run the show for the next generation with them. We will see what happens next after this. What happens? Who becomes the king? Is it the blind Drithrashtra or is it the pale Pandu? So we will see what happens from there. How does the whole, the conflict between the Drithrashtra family and the Pandu family starts? What happens from there? We will continue all this in coming episodes, and as of now, I take a leave from here. Bye bye. Have a nice week ahead. Enjoy the Holy Fest today. Have a nice week ahead, and Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. See you all next week. Until then, it's bye bye from Shankar Narayan.